All right, now that we're at 2 past, I'll open things up. Welcome to all of you who are here with us today. Examples of AI tools in advocacy and campaigns. On behalf of the Stray Dog Institute team, Vegan Hacktivist, and Plant-Based News, we're really thrilled to see so many of you here. We hope that you find this thought-provoking. Each presenter today will speak for around 20 minutes, and we'll try to preserve 15 minutes or so at the end for the Q&A. And we ask that instead of submitting questions through the chat feature, as you might be used to doing, we'd like you to submit them using the Q&A feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen. You can also indicate support for questions that have already been asked there to help move them higher up in priority. But all questions we receive will be answered. In the days following this webinar, registrants will receive access to the slides, the call recording, and a written document with the answers to questions, including any that we don't actually have time to get to in the Q&A today. At specific times during the presentations, we'll also make certain links available for you at the bottom of the screen for just a limited time. All links that are mentioned, however, in the presentations will be available in the presentation slides that you see after the event. If you have any trouble at all submitting your questions using the Q&A feature, just reach out to me or to Lauren Kohler, and we'll do our best to help you. Without further ado, I'm very pleased to introduce our speakers. We'll hear first from James Morgan, Director of Operations at Vegan Hacktivists, who will explore the benefits and risks of AI for advocates and share a few examples and tips for using text-based AI to fuel animal advocacy campaigns. And second, we'll hear from Robbie Lockey, Chief Marketing Officer at Plant-Based News, who will share real-world examples of AI image generation for animal advocacy campaigns and show us some emerging challenges and norms for optimizing these tools. With that, James, you have the floor.
Thank you, Laura. Hi there. It's fantastic to be here with you all today alongside our friends from Stray Dog Institute, as well as Robbie from Plant-Based News. I'm James, Director of Operations at Vegan Hacktivists, where we provide free capacity building services to fund animal protection groups via branding and logos, web design, and software projects for them. Now, today we'll be expanding on the themes that we covered in our recent introductory session on AI's role in animal protection. We really hope you found that session useful. Today, I'll be delving deeper into how AI can contribute to the success of campaigns specifically. First off, I'll revisit the basics of AI, and then I'll look at some ideas of how AI might aid your campaign work. I'll then tackle the risks and mitigations that you should be considering when using AI in your campaigns, finishing up with a live demo before handing over to Robbie. Now, before we get started, I just want to recognize that we've got a huge army of effective and experienced campaigners advocating for animal protection around the world in numerous different ways. This session aims at empowering these campaigners. You'll very soon see how AI's limitations means that we'll need a human touch long into the future. Regardless of whether you were part of our previous webinar, we should take a moment to revisit the basics of AI given its rapidly evolving nature, both in terms of capabilities and availability too. But first, a quick thought for you all. If you could ask a companion animal or a farmed animal one question and have an AI translate their response, what would it be? Now, without it getting too dark, consider putting your question in the chat, and I'd love to see what those questions might be. And whilst it might sound far-fetched, this concept, work is already underway today to understand various animal languages using AI, so we might not be that far away from an answer. So what is AI? Artificial intelligence can be thought of as the digital equivalent of a school child. And just like a child learns through many hours of repetition and exposure to different problems across a range of different subjects, AI is trained on a wider range of data, from text documents to images. All the while, it uses algorithms to identify patterns in that data, making sense of it and applying the learned knowledge to new contexts. But in the same way that a child's education is limited to their curriculum, AI's understanding is constrained by its training data and algorithms. Therefore, an AI's effectiveness, just like a student's academic success, is deeply dependent on the quality and the breadth of the data it's exposed to. Depending on its purpose and its training, AI can deliver outputs in various forms, including as text, imagery, or even video. And with such wide-ranging applications, AI has now become a commodity. Tech giants like Google and OpenAI offer AI as a service enabling organizations to utilize AI without developing their own technology themselves at great expense. These platforms, such as ChatGPT, are where most of us will knowingly interact with AI. ChatGPT is the most popular AI text tool, but it's worth noting that Bard by Google can be powerful, accessed via bard.google.com, as well as Poe or Claude, accessed at poe.com. Now, the key functional difference between those AI tools that I just mentioned is that whilst ChatGPT is arguably currently the most powerful AI tool, it lacks up-to-date data and internet access, which is what Bard and Poe or Claude both feature. So it's worth considering that in your choices around which AI to use. However, internet access is very soon coming to ChatGPT paid subscriptions and accounts. So how can you use AI for campaign work? Well, many of the generalist approaches that we explored in our first webinar apply here to campaign work too, such as using role play to simulate and understand the perspective of stakeholders in your campaign via chatbot. But we're going to look at some more ideas here today. And as with any interaction with AI, we recommend you explore tweaking and optimizing your prompts. That's the input to the AI in order to get the best out of your request. This is really important. And we'll look at that a little bit later. So when it comes to campaigns, AI offers multiple different opportunities to streamline and accelerate your efforts, including generating content for you, removing that blank canvas challenge of starting from scratch. AI can rapidly produce drafts of press releases, blog posts, newsletters, or social media posts to speed up campaign execution. It might be that you request only template text with suggested wording that you later refine to suit your needs. This has got huge potential to save you time. As for campaign research, AI can serve as a creative collaborator and assistant, or even playing the devil's advocate, facilitating quick brainstorming sessions for campaign ideas or strategies. Equally, AI can conduct research and analysis for you to pinpoint the most effective or influential targets for campaign efforts, such as prominent policymakers or organizations. You can also ask AI to summarize studies and technical documentation for you. Do fish feel pain when handled? Do cats need to eat meat to thrive? Or is soy bad for the environment? These are all questions that we might sometimes refer to studies for answers. Personally, I've spent many hours trying to decipher long studies, or even an abstract or a conclusion fail to effectively summarize the outcomes, or similarly, only realizing after the fact that actually the study was funded by an industry body. If you have a public link to a study, you can ask Bard or Claude to summarize it, guiding it with your prompt to get you where you need to be in your understanding of a topic. As for public interactions and external facing comms, Claude or ChatGPT could act as a virtual assistant integrated on your website to answer common questions from supporters, from volunteers, and from the general public about your campaigns, your goals, your objectives, and related facts. This can be done by a relatively simple website plugin upgrade at a low cost, or alternatively, a free alternative is simply using assistants to create replies to emails for you, manually copying and pasting from your email client back to the AI, which, whilst a manual task, still would be a significant time saver. We previously discussed roleplay, where you get your AI assistant to roleplay as someone you're trying to influence, for example. But in terms of training, AI can be used in many ways for new joiners to your organization to provide a basic animal rights education, or to provide information on laws and regulations, or by providing guidance on effective advocacy and communication methods, as well as for campaign planning and execution. Monitoring of online sources is possible via Claude or via Bard. They can both review recent online sources like social media, like news sites, and industry reports to identify emerging issues, detect a negative sentiment about a subject online, or flag topics of interest for campaigners. Whilst this is really powerful, it's relatively new technology. It's newer than the concept of AI in general. Results can be superficial in monitoring online resources right now. It's not available, this feature is not available in ChatGPT right now because ChatGPT lacks that internet access, which is why you would have to rely on Claude or Bard to fulfill those requirements. When it comes to translation, we've probably all used Google Translate in the past with mixed success. Well, translating campaign materials and websites, it's so important to attract international supporters and expand your reach. But by using DeepL, which is an AI translation tool, this is specifically designed for translation and is mostly free to use rather than ChatGPT. And you'll find much better results on DeepL than you would on any previous translation tool like Google Translate in the past. So these are just some ideas on how you might engage with AI text tools in a user-friendly and accessible way. There are many more technical AI applications, but these generally require an advanced level of technical expertise, as well as access to costly technology plans. So we won't delve into them in detail right now. However, they're included in the reference slide at the end of this deck. And examples might include training an AI model to detect illegal activities via image analysis, such as looking for illegal hunting, animal trafficking, testing, or welfare abuses on farms. I'd like to mention briefly a great resource for those who want to continue learning about AI and practice what you've learned during this webinar in a supportive community. The Impactful Animal Advocacy community on Slack is an inclusive place for animal advocates to connect and to collaborate. Specifically, there are 2 AI channels, AI Productivity and AI General, where you can dive deeper into your AI learning journey. I think we'll have a link to that community in the chat. Constance Lee and Quinn Mahu are currently taking the lead on AI initiatives in this community, but this is a duocracy. So anyone who wants to contribute their time is more than welcome to start their own ventures. And I know Robbie was active on this community just last week. I'd also like to mention that we've got some guidance on prompts in the appendix of the deck for you to review and refer to, highlighting how some simple nuance in your prompts can help you yield much better results from AI. It's really important to talk about the risks and limitations of AI right now, because whilst a powerful tool, there are a few areas that you should be aware of when deciding when and how to use AI models. And in the context of campaign work specifically, there are some additional risks that I want to flag right now. Firstly, there's bias. Now, since AI is limited to the data it's trained on, AI tools such as chatbots could generate biased or insensitive responses that don't represent the values of your organization. This could, of course, be damaging to your reputation and the trust with donors or volunteers or any of your stakeholders. Importantly, AI can hallucinate or make up facts that are completely fabricated. And this could be steered by that very same bias. The image analysis that I mentioned a few minutes ago may be less effective at identifying illegal or unethical activities involving certain animal species, breeds, genders, or ages that it's not trained on via this bias. And as a result, some issues that you're trying to spot could very well go undetected. Now, in terms of your campaign authenticity, it's worth noting that an over-reliance on AI could make campaigns seem less genuine, less personal, and less emotionally compelling. That human touch is and will for a very long time still be very important. Now, it's possible and at times very easy to identify copy written by AI, which means that those stakeholders you're trying to influence or engage with, or even those colleagues you're trying to collaborate with, can become fatigued and disengaged by seemingly AI-generated work. In the UK recently, a famous football player hit the news for allegedly generating tweets from ChatGPT to communicate his frustration at losing the game. Whether he did or not is another question. When considering whether and how to use AI, remember, just because we can doesn't mean we should. Consider using AI outputs as a template and never as a provider of a finished product. Personally, at Vegan Hacktivists, I'm starting to see grant applications to our grant program that have clearly been written by AI. And I would suggest using AI as a support tool in your grant applications rather than as the main author of your grant, to ensure that the recipient of your application is engaged in learning about your project. And when it comes to privacy, the data collection and usage practices of AI companies, they're not always transparent. People might not realize what data is collected, how it's being used, and who has access to it. My advice is that we should trust AI technology and AI organizations as much as we trust similar big tech companies and their approach to data privacy. As for mitigations, there are some ways to mitigate these risks. And I want to go back to that analogy of AI as a school kid. Imagine this wonder child has graduated college young at age 16 and is now entering the world of work as an incredibly smart intern. This person in the workplace would require constant oversight and review of every single output because they lack experience and nuance. We need to treat AI in the same way. So let's take a look at how some of these needs are met by AI, stepping through some examples. So I'm going to jump out of this deck, and we're going to look at ChatGPT. So I've pre-filled some of these prompts just because ChatGPT and AI models often take a bit of time in their responses. But we're going to start in ChatGPT here, and we're going to get the AI tool to do some research for us. We're starting to see some really great advocacy for farmed fish at the moment. And the prompt here asks whether there's a high number of fish farms in the UK. And I've asked it as well what problems farmed fish might typically face. We've got the output here from ChatGPT. And the output, I would say, is pretty interesting. I could have Googled this and waded through tons of articles. And I think that would have taken quite a bit longer. But what I've got is a clear answer. It's nicely structured, it flows, we've got a numbered list, and it doesn't look too dissimilar to a report that a colleague might have provided if you'd asked them to go away and research the topic. It's given me a few avenues for further investigation, and it's also given me an awareness of the problems that farmed fish might face, as well as what we have here, which is what we could do about it and some potential strategies. So what I would do with this is then perhaps hone the prompt to focus on specific fishes like salmon or trout, or I could ask the AI model about specific fish farming companies. But I'll leave it to you to experiment here. Now we're going to get a template for some campaign materials, specifically a petition. Now, of course, you should really get creative here in your prompt, being as specific as you need to be, and also doing due diligence on the output. I asked for a template for a petition to recognize the sentience of fish, requesting a ban on new farms. Now, what you'll notice here is the prompt is pretty lengthy. And that's simply because I got pretty lazy. I wrote a 2-line prompt, and then I asked ChatGPT to optimize it for me. And I chose to take some of its advice and also not. But as you can see, we've got that quite detailed prompt here. And what I have towards the end as well is some notes about tone and language, as well as specifically asking for a call to action. What we have here is a really quite detailed petition, again, using this as a template rather than the finished product. In my opinion, I think it's pretty long. You can see it goes on for quite a while, actually. But again, I would revisit the prompt and tweak it. But what I might do is, having a quick read of it, it looks a bit formal. I might request a less formal style. But ultimately, you would then adjust this with contextual information from your own organization to make it work best for you. So there's the petition output. Let's switch to Bard. This is what Bard looks like. This is Google's AI product. And what I've asked it to do is to summarize a study. I've provided a web link at the top. And I've asked it, well, who funded it? And did it find evidence that fish feel pain? That's one of the topics of the studies. And here's the response. It gives you some findings as to who funded it. And it also gives you some fantastic bullet points, which saves you from having to read the study itself. That's fantastic. However, what I have to add here is that the points around funding are incorrect. The study was not funded. So in this case, Bard has hallucinated what it thinks to be reality. It's not true. So that's why it's really important not to trip up. Google is such a trusted, in many ways, such a trusted organization. You should always do due diligence and kind of analyze the output to make sure that you're not being told a fabrication. Okay, we're going to go back to ChatGPT. And what I've asked it to do here is something that I've always had trouble with, which is writing a press release. So here we need a press release that will send to media outlets covering a recent undercover investigation. And in the prompt, we've asked it to be aware of defamation while still communicating the severity of the allegations. So it's taken that and it's provided a press release which flows quite nicely. And just like the petition material we saw a few minutes ago, would then require molding to make it fit for purpose. However, because the prompt asked it to be cautious of defamation, arguably it's watered down the output. So what I suggest in this case is removing that from your prompt and doing your own kind of shaping afterwards to make sure that you're not kind of misstepping from a legal perspective. But otherwise, what's happened is, it's saying we're unable to mention the farm X, Y, and Z. So that's something that you'd want to be conscious of. Next up, we're going to build out the FAQ section of my farmed fish campaign group's website. So we might ask for the common questions that the general public might want to ask of your organization and might today be emailing you in your hello @ or your admin inbox, which would be requiring certain amounts of operational time to answer those emails all the time. Now, what's happened is ChatGPT has given us 10 answers to 10 questions, and it's done it really succinctly. That was part of the prompt, do it concisely and in an informative way, understandable to a non-specialist audience. Now, what you could do with this is you could put this straight on your website, but you could also integrate it into a chatbot to appear on the landing page of your website, and people could just chat to it, asking those questions and getting the answers that they would have otherwise fielded to your most likely very busy inboxes. Okay, and finally, this is Poe, the platform that was shared earlier, and the specific chatbot that we're using here is Claude. And what we're trying to do here is get some country-specific insight from online sources. So my prompt here says, well, what are some trends from 2023 about farmed fish advocacy in Scotland that campaigners should be aware of, and what could be solutions? Now, in contrast to what we saw on ChatGPT, this is looking at the latest information online. And the answer has been augmented by those news articles and by those online sources. So you know that you're getting more relevant data. Just like with the other chatbots, it's got some really succinct bullet points. It's really easy for you to digest the answers. As before, the general warnings apply here that the sources, sometimes the links are provided and sometimes those links are totally fabricated. So you have to be careful of it. Click on every link that any chatbot gives you to make sure that it's not made it up. Something that I really like about Poe and Claude is that you can see we've got some hyperlinked points here. It allows you to click on to something that you might want more information about, environmental standards, let's see, and it will give you some information about that topic. Now, what's happened is Claude is, oh no, here we go. Okay, I was having some problems with Claude earlier today. I think it was just dealing with a lot of traffic, but we've got that here. So it allows you to have a follow-on contextual conversation with the chatbot, which is really useful. So,
reminded that we've hit the 20-minute mark.
Thank you, Laura. These demos, they now actually conclude that first section on text-based AI. So we're now going to take a deeper dive into ways that images can be used for campaigns. So thank you so much for listening, and over to Robbie.
Hopefully I am in the webinar and you can all hear me and see me. Thanks so much for having me, everyone. Thank you so much to the Stray Dog team for setting this up, and thank you, James, for the invite. For those that don't know me, I'm Robbie Lockie. I am co-founder and chief creative cat at Plant-Based News. And my role really at the platform is innovation, ideas, brand, social strategy, and all things creative. I'm really excited today to talk about AI image generation, something that I've been playing around with for about 11 months now. I actually checked the time earlier, and it's been 11, almost an entire year. And the rate of change this technology has, the amount of change that has happened in that short amount of time has been something, it's just been incredible. But without further ado, let me share my screen. Great, let's get started. So first of all, we want to start off with trying to understand, like, what is AI image generation? And what that is the ability for machines to imagine imagery based on text prompts. So a bit like ChatGPT, what James showed you, you put in a text prompt, and the machine will bring the image to life. In the beginning, all the way back in 2015, Google were experimenting with something called Deep Dream, where they were using machines well, kind of blessing them with the ability to be able to see and understand what images were. And that was the beginning of this type of technology, where they used something called neural networks, which have been basically a bunch of interconnected nodes and machines that could interpret information, images, and make sense of them in many ways, a lot like a human brain, the neurons of the human brain. And you've got here some examples on the left where you've got, sort of patterns of a neural network, interconnected computers, and then the human neural structure with the neurons in the middle here. In the next diagram, we zoom in a little bit closer, and you can see the inputs of the dendrite, and then the cell body, the myelin sheet, and the axon terminal, which is obviously, for all you brain nerds out there, you can see how there's a real correlation between how the neural networks work, where they pull in information, a bit like how visual cortex, where we see things, goes into the hidden part of our brain, where we then process that information. The output could be the way we describe, paint, draw, or create something. So first of all, before we proceed, it's important to try and understand what are the use cases for this type of technology. And it comes in three parts for me. It's creative expression, so where users can explore their imagination, generate original artworks from any idea or concept they have, and they can use Midjourney to create variations and upscale existing images as well. The second one is content creation. So users could use Midjourney to create high quality visuals for purposes such as book covers, posters, logos, wallpapers, illustrations, comics, memes, you name it. The sky is the limit. And they can use Midjourney to enhance their storytelling and their communication. And obviously we're here today to talk about how we can use it in the AR movement for campaigning and image creation. And of course, also, last but not least, is education and research. We can use Midjourney and image creation tools such as this and machine learning for to understand the principles of art and design and kind of dissect the kind of framework of images themselves. Two of the main tools that I use, I do predominantly use Midjourney, which is an independent platform. And I also occasionally use DALL-E 2, which is created by OpenAI. That's the company and organization that has created ChatGPT. So both are pretty good in their own right. There's many, many other tools that are trying to replicate the power of Midjourney and DALL-E 2, but these are my two favorites, and I find them the most powerful and the most useful. So let's look at popular culture and how this technology has kind of exploded onto the scene. And the first example of this is by Jason Allen, who is a video game designer in Pueblo, Colorado. He spent 80 hours working on this entry, and he entered a digital art competition, and he won the competition. Now, the people who he submitted this to, they did not know that this was an AI-generated image, and they were completely unaware. And he actually won the competition, a $300 prize. And when it was found out that it was an AI-generated image, they withdrew his prize, and of course it went viral across the internet, and everyone was talking about it, and it became a bit of a scandal because obviously it began the conversation of, is AI art really art? Can these images ever be seen as artistic expression? So something to think about, and it's really a big question, and that we will be asking ourselves, I think, for many months and years to come. Some of the key things that we need to think about and be aware of with image generation, just like using ChatGPT and text, is the ethics of this tool, of these tools. And they're broken down into 4 parts here. So the first is data quality and bias. James touched on this slightly. AI image generators rely on large data sets of existing images to learn how to create new ones. So data sets may contain inaccurate, incomplete, and biased data that could affect the quality and diversity of generated images. For example, some data sets may have unrepresented certain groups of people or cultures, which could further reinforce harmful stereotypes and prejudices. Therefore, it's super important to ensure that training data is diverse. So if we're using these tools and we're a part of these communities, I personally have put pressure on organizations like Midjourney to make sure that training data is diverse when it comes to people. And I'll explain a bit about that when I show you some examples. There's obviously intellectual property and attribution. These tools are trained on huge data sets of images that are publicly available. And sometimes it could be seen that we might be infringing on intellectual property or creative rights of certain styles or images without properly referencing the artist that the image originally came from. Now, when you create images in Midjourney, it's not stealing images. It's a bit like human imagination, as I say. It borrows the ideas and the concepts, and then it does create something completely original. But I think when we talk about ethics, if we're going to create imagery that is inspired by a famous artist or popular artist, I think it is only right and credible and transparent to reference the artist that you took inspiration from. People have been plagiarizing and copying each other's work for millennia. This technology doesn't take away from that. It could make it easier for people, but I think that as thought leaders and creators in this space, we want to set the precedent for a good use. Then we look at privacy and consent. So image creators can produce lifelike images of real or fictional people. Those are celebrities or ordinary individuals, and they could potentially violate the privacy and consent of those people being depicted. So, we have to be very conscious about using celebrities, politicians, people in our images or campaigns, as it may provoke controversy. Obviously, sometimes we like to provoke controversy, being in the AR movement. Sometimes, we want to poke the bulldog, as they say. And so, we just need to be mindful of the legal ramifications of these types of things. We are protected by many parody laws across the world if we want to use that type of imagery. But I think it's always being mindful of the legalities of using another person's image, if you wish. Then there's obviously trust and verification. So these tools can produce images that are indistinguishable from reality. So our first example went viral across the world. There was images of Pope Francis wearing a white Balenciaga puffer coat. Many people who first saw this thought this was real. Obviously, it's not. One of the telltale signs you can see here over on the right is his hand holding what looks like some kind of paper cup. The hand is kind of mangled and distorted and deformed, often a telltale sign of an AI-generated image. One of the key things about this technology is that it has its flaws. And I think when you learn to use it, you'll be able to spot these flaws, and you can spot when an image has been artificially generated. Back in the day, people have been using Photoshop for more than 25 years to doctor and falsify imagery. This isn't really any different, but it does allow us to create fake images in ways that we were never able to do before. So it's going to create an interesting conversation and probably a lot of controversy as the years roll on. Another example of that more recently was Donald Trump. I think there was an image created and was released on Twitter, and a lot of people thought that he'd been arrested based on these images. If you weren't expertly trained, if you didn't have the eye, you would assume these were real, because it's very hard to tell, especially on a very small screen. Some more images of Mr. Trump, obviously completely artificial, that were circulated on social media. So let's talk about the evolution of this technology. And I would like to start with my very first image. And that prompt was Archangel floating above the earth. I don't know why I chose that. I just did. And it generated this image that you see here over on the left. Very simple, quite beautiful image, but quite muddy and blurry and quite, what's the word? Primitive, one might say, based on what we're doing today, 11 months later. Some other examples of my image creation were a lot of portraits. I absolutely love portraiture. And we had a young African-American girl at a protest holding a placard. I actually added the words myself much later because these tools can't write typography or create text just yet. And so I added that in. I wanted to create an image of a young person at a protest, at an animal rights protest. So this was 11 months ago. There's some more examples of some imagery I created. I was having a lot of fun with portraits and doing some storytelling on social media, again, about 11 months ago. And this is where we are today. The amount of realism and detail that we can now create with Midjourney is absolutely mind-blowing. This is one of my favorite shows at the moment, The Witcher. I was able to craft Henry Cavill as The Witcher, as well as Yennefer Vengerberg and Princess Cyrilla. If you're fans of the show, you'll know who these characters are. If you don't, they're just fantasy characters. But the dynamic nature of the images is simply incredible. And the light and the texture and the skin and the hair is I mean, there are no words to describe. Well, there are words to describe the image because that's what prompting is. But the power of these tools is it's like magic. We're definitely living in the future. Another example of an image I created for an article at Plant-Based News recently about puppy yoga, about the the ethics of it, and how there's a concern for puppies and young dogs in these environments, the dangers of people stepping on them and hurting them. We couldn't find an appropriate image on an Adobe stock, so we came up with our own images to use in the article to talk about the ethics of using animals in this type of environment, and an opinion piece on it. It's just some more images. For social media, you can obviously create multiple dimensions. So, square, portrait, landscape. Just on this point, when we often put in requests for people, the platforms do, there is a racial bias. They tend to, you start with Caucasian or white people, and you have to specifically say a specific ethnicity if you want. So that's where you have issues around bias built into platforms, severe, mostly because of the volume of images of certain types of people and cultures. So when creating images, it's always important to be very mindful of making sure that there is a diverse set of people featured in your creative. Something more recent I made, I'm obsessed with sci-fi, but you can see here the level of detail and the layers created in this image. Political imagery is incredibly powerful and can be a fun way to poke fun at politicians, as Boris Johnson, our illustrious ex-leader of the United Kingdom, partying during the COVID pandemic. If you didn't know, and you saw this on social media, you might think that it was a real image. And so going back to my point earlier, false imagery is a big concern, and it's something we're going to have to definitely look out for when we are talking about false information. So let's look at examples of how we might use this tool in the AR movement. I had an idea for a billboard, and it came to me, I was just lying there one night thinking, how cool would it be to have a big billboard of a young woman holding a chicken outside a factory farm, and it's with big text, it said criminal, and then the billboard slides, it's like a digital billboard, it slides, and then there's another young woman with a dog rescuing the dog from a burning building, and it says hero, and then it slides again, and then it says the only difference is your perception, end animal agriculture, go vegan. If I had to create this campaign, it would be thousands of pounds worth of photography and art direction and stuff. It would be a huge budget having to make something like this. With this tool and with this type of image creation, you could instantly create a campaign and get it out on social media and out in the real world within a week, rather than several weeks or even a month or maybe even more. The team over at PETA, my good friend Dan Howe, produced this based on some ideas through Midjourney, where the idea is, if the cows were like whales, would you tear them apart? And so there's this beautiful image of a mama cow swimming with her baby in the ocean, like as if she was a whale, very captivating imagery. And this is what's really exciting and powerful about these tools, is that they're going to give us the ability to imagine anything and communicate it in a really visual and powerful way that people have never seen before. And so I do genuinely believe this is a secret weapon that animal rights advocates can use in their advocacy and their content and their socials, in their campaigns, in their emails, that can really grab people's attention, essentially. Let's move on to, and I'm conscious, obviously, I'm flying through this because there's obviously a lot to learn, and I will be available if people do want to ask me questions afterwards. And of course, I'm contactable on social media if you would like more support on this subject. But let's look at the prompting itself and the heart of the AI generation, which is the anatomy of a prompt. When we use tools like Midjourney, we initiate the command using /imagine and then prompt : and the prompt is made up of the subject, the context, and the medium and the operators. So the subject is, what is it? What are you trying to describe? And I've got here a hare as big as a human lies sprawled and slumped in a simple beach chair, sleeping in the garden, legs resting on the upfolded part of the chair. The hare's eyes are closed, mouth slightly open. The hare sleeping deeply in a minimalistic Dutch garden. The hare lies in the same way as a grown-up man would lie in a beach chair. And then we've got the context. It's sunny, summer, golden hour, realism, atmospheric, golden illumination, photorealistic. Then we have the medium. How was the image created? It was shot on 35mm. It's got moody lighting. It's got cinematic lighting. It's an ultra wide angle. There's a bit of depth of field. The shutter speed is 1/1000. The f-stop, so the size of the shutter is f-stop 22, and it's got a cinematic feel. It's obviously associated with photography. It's photographic, and it's 8K, meaning it's as high resolution as it will go. And then you have the operators, which are very simple. I'll provide those after, which are --AR space 16:9, which is the dimension. So is it portrait, or is it 9:16? Is it portrait is 9:16, landscape is 16:9, and square is 1:1. So that's the dimensions of the image. And then V is the version. So that's the image generation algorithm. It comes in many, many versions because it's evolving so fast. And then -Q2, meaning give me the highest quality image. And that's what we created. A giant hare sitting in a chair in a garden with depth of field, with his eyes half closed, slumped like a grown man on a beach chair, which I think is hilarious. So this tool is incredibly powerful, and we have the ability to choose our perspective. Is the image from above? Is it from below? Is it from the side? Is it a drone shot? Is it a medium shot? Is it a wide shot? You can use these words in bold in your prompting to describe the image in really specific detail. And, you know, just going back to the prompting for a sec, one bit of advice I always give people is describe this. And I love James' example of a young school kid. Describe the image as if you were describing it to a child. The child had never seen what you are describing before, but it understands the words and it understands how to imagine. And so our tool is our kind of job really is to create enough information for the AI to be able to pool its memory of billions of images and coalesce an image into reality for us. And so we can use perspective, we can use lighting, we can use styling. So we can say photographic, we can say illustrative, we can say it's a sketch, it's a storyboard, it's on paper, it's on cardboard. You can describe the medium. There is no limit to it. So quickly moving on now to what James asked before, which is what if humans and animals could speak? And James came up with this prompt, which I tweaked slightly just to give us a bit more relevant images, because it's quite tricky to get what we want off the bat. But we said two young men or two young people looking at a cow and a chicken on an animal sanctuary, with the humans being able to understand the animals. They're all speaking. It's sunny, summer, golden hour, realism, atmospheric, global illumination, photorealistic, shot on 35mm, moody lens, etc. Similar to what I put before. And here's some of the images that came out. So young person on a sanctuary talking to a cow, two young friends having a conversation with a cow in perhaps an orchard. Another image of a young person with a cow, two friends chatting to a mama cow, two young boys in a field with a cow. These are all based on the same prompt. So the machine will just keep imagining, and you can keep tweaking and rolling and rolling and rolling, and it will just keep giving you more and more different people, more and more different faces. And you can see here how beautiful the light is and how it's so aware of every aspect of that image and the way the light falls on every aspect of that image. And the realism is absolutely breathtaking. Just more people with animals, communing with animals based on our request. One of the most exciting features about the tool now is zoom out. The image on the left is a young man, perhaps with his friend or his dad, with the cows on the sanctuary, and there's a button where you can press and it will allow you to zoom out. So you can see the image on the right-hand side is a zoomed out version of that image. So, you know, if you're creating different assets or elements, you might want to have a multiple angles or direction of that image. And so this gives you the power to do that. We've got some creative resources over at docs.midjourney.com with whatever you want to know about how to use the tool with all the commands and all the controls. Very, very simple and really explanatory. The only limit is your imagination. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to both of our presenters for all these resources and ideas. That certainly gave us plenty to chew on. It's time now for Q&A, and some really great questions have been coming through the Q&A feature already, but please do feel free and add more if they occur to you now. And I think we'll start off with some of the ones that are near the top of the list. A question came in that said, thank you to everyone. In what ways can AI be best leveraged to address the challenges and complexities of animal advocacy campaigns, while also ensuring the preservation of human judgment, empathy, and ethical decision-making throughout the process? I wonder, this is sort of a question for both of you, James and Robbie, whoever would like to take it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll go first. I would say that I can't really answer it, and the answer is best given by fellow campaigners at this webinar. You know, with AI as a tool, this is your basis, and it gets you on the road, and you've got to drive once you get the output and once you get what the AI gives you. If you imagine, you know, 10, 15 years ago, we were all using Microsoft Word and we were amazed by the templates that it gave us. You know, oh, look, you can write a letter because there's a template, but it was so basic. Like we've moved on a lot now, and AI can give us so much more, but you know, we've got to keep doing what we do as humans to get that finished product really refined. How about you, Robbie?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's a bit of an unknown. I suppose the way I'm treating these tools is if I had an assistant, a junior assistant who can do incredible things, but I do need to double check what they're doing. And it's another pair of hands that is incredibly powerful, but could also make some bad decisions, because James mentioned these tools hallucinate. So they're very good at making things up. I mean, Midjourney is pure hallucination. It's pure image. It's a pure imagination. And so, you know, we have to be mindful of using these tools. And I know none of us are going to be using them for nefarious reasons, but there are people out there doing that. And I think being advocates in, you know, against animal agriculture, I think if it's only a matter of time before agencies that are being paid by animal agriculture will be using these tools. So the quicker we all get ahead of the game in this stuff, the better, I think.
Thank you both. A few more questions that have come in. One asks, when you use AI to generate an image for news, do you note that it is an AI generated image in the caption or elsewhere?
Yes, good question. So we actually have an article, not an article, but a page on our website, which is the ethics of AI at Plant-Based News, where we are clearly outlining how and when we use AI. And if we use it, we will be very clear that we're using it. So if there's an image generated with AI, we will say, you know, this is a creative image generated using AI. If it's an image by of a celebrity or a politician, we would make sure that when we are generating that image, we're not using that person in any uncompromising position. It will just be a portrait. And I might say image for illustrative purposes only generated using AI. So it's just very clear that we're just showing who that person is. We're not putting them in any specific environment. And that we're going to be very clear about every time we use it. And even when we write articles with ChatGPT, everything's fact checked, and we do go through our proper editorial process with the article. But at the bottom it'll say this article is written in collaboration with ChatGPT. See our opinions. Sorry, see our views on ethics and AI over here, and you click and there's an article, a page all about our opinions and views. I'll put it in the chat as well.
Fantastic. Another question asks, aside from potentially losing public trust when using AI-generated content, as we've discussed, do search engines treat AI content differently? What are the risks of being ranked lower, et cetera, when leveraging AI?
Yeah, I can take that. So to my knowledge, I don't think search engines treat AI content any differently. I've been beginning to see certain things, for example, on Google or DuckDuckGo, where I'm looking for something in particular, an article or some advice, and I'm reading through it, and then because I've read through so many outputs of AI, I can tell that actually this is from ChatGPT and it's been ranked top with SEO. So yeah, no, I don't think right now, I don't think search engines treat AI generated content differently. There are tools that are readily accessible where you can just Google them and you'll have access to them within seconds, where you can verify whether the likelihood that something was created by AI. So that might be the situation today, but in the future, it could be that technologies are used to no longer prioritize AI-generated content for that reason.
I also love to add as well that whether something generated by an AI or a human being, I think the focus should be on originality, and that, you know, plagiarism is no joke, and that we don't want to be accidentally plagiarizing other people's content. And we use Grammarly, and there are other plagiarism checker tools, but if we write something in ChatGPT, it always goes into Grammarly before it goes to the platform, because Grammarly will check billions of pages for plagiarism. And so if it has happened to accidentally pull in a paragraph or two in a way that hasn't written in an original way, it hasn't happened yet, Grammarly will flag it. And so, the whole point of publishing content is to be original. Obviously, I think the big question is, what is an original thought? If the machine is coming up with the thoughts, what am I? Just the monkey behind the machine? But, it's a big question about how much do we use these tools. I think they're still gonna, they're gonna need us for a long time, hopefully a few centuries.
Yeah. I think this is a question. This next one is probably for Robbie, but we've had the question, and this is coming from the perspective of folks who are less familiar with some of the technological terminology around images. When prompting AI image generation, do you have to add in the medium and the operators and things like that?
You don't have to add in the medium. No, you don't. And you don't have to add the operators at all. But the operators there's only about maybe 4 or 5 of them. So if you have them on hand, then you can just copy and paste them in. As far as the medium, as in like the lens and the style of the shot, I would just encourage you to learn a bit more about the basics of photography and image composition. So, how to shoot an image and how you would compose an image. It's not a steep learning curve, but I think having a prompt library where you have like a text doc on your computer or a Google Doc where you just have all your different formulations. Think of them like spells, incantations. If you say a specific spell, I'm not a massive Harry Potter fan, but if you were saying Lumos, the lights would come on, and that is a spell that does a specific thing, and you just get used to saying that same thing. It's the same with prompting. You just say the same thing over and over, and it gives you a similar result. So the images that are created with James, it was very moody. It was kind of like dusk lighting, and if you said that type of prompting lighting style a lot, then the images would all have that same feel to them.
I've also seen a question come in asking, I think this is a really interesting one. How can we verify that the faces of the people that AI produce do not look like real people?
That is a very good question. Currently, I don't know of any way to do that. You could do a reverse image search in Google, but even then, because of privacy, a lot of platforms are not, what's the word? They're not letting you search for people by their faces for obvious reasons. The likelihood is it's quite unlikely. These tools pull in billions of images, but that being said, doppelgangers are a thing. I've done images in the past where I've created a person's face and I'm like, that looks like somebody I know, but I can't put my finger on it. Humans are attuned to recognizing faces, not just on people, but in like slices of toast. We love faces. I know that's not really answering the question, but I think currently it's not. There wouldn't be a way that doesn't contravene privacy laws to be able to check that.
Next one is maybe for both of you. Do you have any specific tips that work across different platforms? This person says, I've seen a lot of suggestions to maybe tell AI who you are, to ask questions of you. Is there weight to these suggestions, and should it be a back and forth with AI to get the best results?
Yes, I'll take that one. So should it be back and forth? Yes, absolutely. I would encourage everyone to just experiment with the AI model by giving it a really high-level prompt that doesn't really tell it enough to see what the output is, and then making some changes to it to actually tell the AI model who you are, what the purpose is of the output is that you're looking to use, as well as things like tone, and see how that changes the output to suit your needs. Or even ask the AI model exactly that question: how should I work with you to get the best out of you? And it will give you some really interesting ideas, I think.
Great. Well, I think we have time maybe for just one more, but we've also received the question, how do you envisage animal agriculture representatives using these tools and potentially using them against animal advocates?
Falsifying images of activists, perhaps, using fake imagery to make false accusations, I would say. Not sure about text, but
on the other side, they might also claim that materials that have been produced by the animal protection movement are false, particularly things like investigative footage and things like that. So it's really important that whatever we do, we're doing it in the real world, that we have ways of validating that what we have created in reality is real and is not AI generated.
Absolutely. There was one quick, if I may quickly squeeze, I know it's just one of the questions I could squeeze it in very quickly. It's just about trademark, because I get asked this question all the time. What are the laws around trademark with regards to images? As far as I believe, according to Midjourney, if you buy the license to use the software and you use the corporate license, which is like $60 a month, as the person creating the prompt and the owner of the account, you own the rights to that image in its perpetuity, so full rights to that image, which you can then use as you wish. Obviously, being mindful, as with any image creation, is not to use brands, logos, buildings, because obviously you would need property releases, or if you're using recognizable faces of an individual, you would need a model release. So as long as you're creating fictional imagery, you should be fine.
Well, thank you all for this. And this all the time we have for Q&A. Please do look for the recording and the slides and all the questions and answers, including those that we did and did not get to here in the Q&A, in your inbox the next few days. And we'll also circulate a survey where we look forward to hearing your feedback and your ideas for future webinars. So thank you once again to all presenters and attendees for being here today, and hope you have a great rest of your day.